Welcome back. You're still watching Open Exchange, and joining us now at the desk are Costa Livanos, owner and managing director of New Ventures Consulting and Services, and Costa Livanos, owner and director of New Ventures Consulting and Services. Gentlemen, welcome. Lovely to have you at the desk. Let's start off by just looking at how municipal rates actually work and how they should work.
Okay. Basically, when a property gets transferred, a transferring attorney is appointed. They are asked to obtain municipal clearance figures. A clearance certificate then gets issued in terms of section 1181, and a transfer then can get done. Now, there is a piece of legislation called section 1183, which a lot of the attorneys are not always dealing with. And what the municipalities then try and do is they're trying to transfer that section 1183 outstanding historical debt to new owners.
Why would they do that, though? I mean, why would you not get the existing owner or the outgoing owner to settle all the outstanding debt, and why would you try to transfer that onto a new buyer?
Look, in terms of legislation, and our legislation was written very well, the municipalities have to issue a certificate for the last 2 years' arrears in order to effect transfer. At the point of transfer, you only have to get a clearance certificate in order to effect transfer. To recover the section 183, they must recover it from the current owner. They cannot transfer it to the new owner.
Where did this law come from, and why has it been allowed to survive for so long? It just seems so wrong.
Now, well, in 2002, this is when the new legislation came out, the Municipal Systems Act that was introduced. Municipalities have been more or less compliant with it over a period of time. And in terms of that act, municipalities had an obligation to collect monies the right way. What's happened over a period of time, I'm not blaming them, but they have failed dismally to collect. So what actually happens is what Peter was trying to explain. In terms of section 1181, is the last 2 years you have to pay, but there's still a debt on the property. During the course of that period, they should have actually claimed that money, taken the people to court, switched off the electricity, did what they had to do in terms of the law. They failed.
So, Costa, are you saying that it's easier for the municipality just to load the new money onto the new owner than go through the process of collecting that outstanding debt?
No, well, it's not simple as that, because we've challenged it. They cannot do it. That is why we are in court now. They try to do it to some of our clients. We've got interim orders. They cannot transfer the debt to a new owner. If they fail to do their obligation during the contract, and even at the time before transfer, they've got powers to block a transfer if they have to. They've got powers to do whatever action. They've got legal action. Once that property is transferred, then they must chase the old owner. They can't chase the new owner. It's like, I mean, it's ridiculous.
How widespread is this problem?
Well, basically, this is what I actually was going to lead on to. I'd like to read one or two documents from a few of the representatives of councils, in other words, the municipalities themselves, some of their debt-collecting attorneys. As a prospective transferee buyer of the above-mentioned property, your attention is drawn to outstanding balance outside of the provisions of section 118, which, if remains unpaid, will remain a debt on the property and may be recovered from the subsequent owners of property. Here's one from one of their debt collectors. Since these charges remain a charge against the property, the existing and all future owners remain liable for payment of these charges. And the last one. Please take further notice that no reconnection of services to the property will take place until the full amount due is paid. Now, where this has come from, there was a court case last year between the city of Tshwane and Matabata, which everybody, I believe, is purposefully misinterpreting to suit their needs. The legislation is very clear. That judgment is crystal clear. And as my father said, that is the case that we are taking to the courts for declarator to ensure that the councils cannot do this.
Who are you acting for? Sorry,
Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, I'm almost smelling a rat in the sense of the role of the agency that is now responsible for the actual transaction. The agency, surely, Costa, must have a handle on the different pieces of legislation and the fact that they should be making aware the new owner prior to making sure that the transaction goes through. What role are the agencies playing? Are they ringing the alarm bells to say, do you know that you're going to have X amount loaded as debt to you?
I don't think it's necessary. The agents don't have to do that, because the new owner cannot become liable. Full stop. The old owner is liable for that debt, and it's up to them to settle it. And in most instances, the old owner does settle the debt. It happens in mainly liquidations and shed of sales and places, or maybe there were delinquent owners that didn't, and that's where the problem arises. But they still cannot transfer that debt onto other people. And the reason why we're involved, you asked the question, is we've done about 10,000 transactions over the last 10 years for banks and liquidators, etc., where they bring their accounts to us, we do a full audit, and we make sure we pay the municipality the correct amounts. We indemnify our clients that if they have any problems, we will look after them, go to court, do whatever we have to do, which we have done. We've gone to court, we've got interim court orders that have forced the municipality to switch on the electricity. Municipalities not only saying, I'm passing the debt to you, they're blackmailing the actual clients by saying, we're not going to give you electricity. And they can't do that because, first of all, in terms of the Constitution, in terms of the Electricity Act, they cannot refuse consumption. It's a basic commodity like water. So it's got nothing to do with all this. But, I mean, you take an innocent owner to go to court today, if the municipality team, give me 30,000 rand or I'm not switching on, he'll switch on because to get into court before you open your eyes, it's 100,000 rand.
Yeah, which brings me to the costs issue. I mean,
exactly.
You're acting on behalf of clients, but this can be an expensive campaign. So who is funding your campaign?
We are.
We are.
This is the promise we give to our clients, that we ensure that if we act for you, we guarantee you that there will be no comeback or problem. So we analyze the municipalities' accounts in very strict accordance with the law. We ensure that inside 118 as well as outside 118 is paid and settled in full.
What's your track record? Have you been able to recover any of these debts that have been loaded onto new owners?
Well, as my father said, we've done in excess of 10,000 transactions
That's
to
3 a
date.
day. I've just worked out. That's 3 a day for 10 years.
Yeah. No, we're pretty busy. And we have a perfect track record. We have a perfect track record. We haven't been proved wrong once.
Not once.
Looking,
That's impressive.
you've talked about Tshwane. Do other cities, municipalities do this? Are there places where they're all getting away with it without someone fighting them?
Absolutely, they get away because, like I've just explained, I mean, a lot of people can't afford to fight. They've taken transfer, a bond's been waiting to be registered. So what do? So the council says, give me another 20,000 rand, or I'm not going to give you.
But if you guys win in this case in the court, surely that becomes binding on other
everybody. To
jurisdictions.
become law. That is why we're trying to set the precedents all over the country.
But it sounds like whether it's the law or not, they ignore it.
They don't care. They ignore it. Because you know why? They have felt terribly in their own obligations. They've got all the powers in terms of the Act to do their work, but they don't do it. So this is the easy way out for them.
Do you know if our world-class African city, Johannesburg, is doing it? Does it happen here?
The City of Joburg has been yes and no. They've been off and on because they've had a lot of negotiation with the City of Joburg. They first said yes. There's a letter from them to say they will. They won't open a consumers agreement. And I've been having talks to them, and I'm saying to them, if it comes to the push, because I've got a good relationship, I'll be forced to take them to court as well, and I'll get a court order against them as well. And if they do to any of our clients, if it was one of our clients, they will see us in court, and the court has in every instance have given us the relief we wanted. They've said, switch on immediately the electricity until this whole thing's been determined in court about their judgment. Switch on. You would think that at least until they've got a judgment, they would act diligently. I mean, I'll give you an example. Is that you take a poor person. A disadvantaged poor person over the years has saved their money because they never had money in those days. They get their first bond, and we did one for a lady in Pretoria. She's wheel-bound. And it's her first house. So now she gets to the property, she buys a property, she has a deposit, she now gets a bond and she buys a property. Some rich white person, for example, never paid his debt years ago. Now they load that account onto her account. Come off it. That is nonsense.
It certainly sounds to me, Peter, like there's a lot of players in this. I mean, we've spoken about the municipality, we've touched a bit on the agencies, but you've also got these debt collection companies that have grown at a phenomenal rate. And surely they're also playing a role in a lot of this harassment language that you just read out to us.
Well, you see, that's one of the ramifications which I don't think the municipalities have actually thought through. Before I actually get to that, I just would like to also mention, can I read this one document, which is basically the Local Government Municipal Systems Act. I want to read a few extracts. To provide for the core principles, mechanisms and processes that are necessary to enable municipalities to move progressively towards the social and economic upliftment of local communities and to ensure universal access to essential services. To empower the poor and ensure that municipalities put in place service tariffs and credit control policies that take their needs into account, by providing a framework for the provision of services. And in the preamble it says, and this was signed by our President, whereas the system of local government under the apartheid failed dismally to meet the basic needs of the majority of South Africans.
Okay, I have to ask a question here. That's written down, it's been signed in. One wonders how many other bylaws, documents, laws have been ignored, and people don't know that they have a right to a certain relief, so they just put up with it, Costa.
That's exactly what happens. I mean, for example, in that document there, the municipalities have got what they call bylaws, and they've got credit control policies. That tells them exactly what they do. For example, if a debtor doesn't pay in 30 days, you switch off the electricity. If they don't pay within 60 days, you go and you hand it over, and they either come and sign an arrangement to pay off the debt, or the attorney takes you to court, it's set, whatever it is. They don't do it. I mean, they let accounts run for years, and they don't pay 1 cent, and they don't do nothing about it. I mean, I don't want to go into details why that happens. You know, that's not for me to say. But it's reckless and careless. Now, because of their carelessness, they want to take the easy way and just say, oh, we'll pass it on to the new owner. Well, while we're around, it's not going to happen. It really is not going to happen.
Peter, I want to go back to these debt collectors. I mean, this seems to be one of the easiest businesses that people are getting into now.
It's a bullying tactic. It's a bullying tactic. As my father said, people don't have money to brief advocates and spend R500,000 in court to fight a 20,000 Rand debt that wasn't theirs in the first place. Now, you know, something that I think is also quite important, I honestly don't believe that the politicians in our country, that even the mayoral committees are even aware what their councils are doing. I'm of the opinion that it is certain officials within the finance departments that have their own agenda because it's easier to run a council that way.
Also, you think of the guy every day who's dealing with the pieces of paper. Much easier, cleaner, not to have to worry about the previous guy and go and hunt him down and do all that.
Exactly.
Would it be legitimate to take disciplinary action against council officials who've been doing this, Costa?
Well, in terms of the actual act, and you see, municipalities do not have a discretion. They are bound to the Local Government Municipal Systems Act. And in that, there is disciplinary action where they can be suspended and penalised for their actions.
Because you'd have to prove that they weren't doing it under the instruction of the finance director or whatever like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the red flags as a new home or potential buyer before it gets to the stage, before you find that you've got this massive debt that's been loaded onto you. What should you be looking for in the fine print as you purchasing your property?
You know, this is where our legislation is written perfectly. Our legislation is perfect. The municipalities must simply stick to the law. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Can I mention one other thing? You know, ramifications. Can you imagine the repercussion to our economy of foreign investment to this country if people from abroad are buying property in our country and effectively can have their properties repossessed because of old owners' debt being transferred to the new property? Council then takes judgment against that amount and repossesses the property. It will collapse our country, and because the municipalities have preference over a bank, the banks will be in dire straits.
It certainly sounds like we've just scratched the surface of a very, very important conversation, and we'll certainly be following that court case.
And all the information is on our website, freely available. We are communicating because we believe that as a nation we need to not do what happened with e-tolls and sit back and wait until it's too late.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Thank you to Peter Livanos, owner and managing director of New Ventures Consulting Services, and Costa Livanos, owner and director of New Ventures Consulting and Services. Well, David, we've had an interesting show, a heated discussion at the end there about that transfer of ownership.
I was a bit taken aback. You know, I was expecting quite a dry legal conversation. Well, it was legal, but these guys are obviously on a mission, the Livanos family, father and son. And what struck me is that, you know, he had the documents here reading out what the laws are and how they are either being ignored in the sense of deliberately flouted, or officials just don't know about them and they're doing perhaps what they've inherited and the easiest way out. And as I say, you just wonder how much else out there is not being enforced and people don't know about it.
Well, the court cases that are out to set a precedent are certainly ones that we will follow. So we will be following how that outcome of the court case goes and see if they are able to set that precedent.
In fact, we must get those guys back in again and see what happens to that case. And I think we've got to get the city council people in and say, are you doing this? Are you aware of this? And where there's a judgment, well, it has to be binding on all councils.
And as I said earlier, David, I mean, it's about all the players in the particular system or in the matrix, and bringing into the conversation these debt collectors, which is a business that has flourished in South Africa, and in particular in this province, quite significantly. And it should be interesting to understand what's driving the growth of debt collectors and where are they making their most money. And if you listen to some of that language that was coming from their letters, it certainly sounds like bullying and harassment tactics through and through.
Yeah, of course there are debt collectors and debt collectors. They're the guys with the baseball bats and you get a bullet through the knee, and then there are lots of very reputable debt collectors who do it. What's worrying here is not so much the practice of debt collection, it's that the councils are not targeting the right people. I mean, and he mentioned this woman who's taken over a house or a flat or whatever it is, and she's got to inherit this debt.
Well, I think it's also very troubling the fact that it's deliberate, because one would think that if it wasn't deliberate, that they would make sure that they put the necessary holds in place before the transfer of ownership takes place. So if it's easier to target the new owners, that's what we'll see.
It all comes back to the politicians in the end. You want them to be accountable. And what we didn't talk about earlier that we wanted to was the new cabinet. We talked yesterday about how that's where the ANC and the DA has to shift now, who they're going to put where. So when what are we expecting from that cabinet is going to then influence things like the chief executive of Eskom.